You've been scrolling through endless spec sheets because you need storage that's not just a brag-worthy number on a page, but something you can actually trust day in and day out. Maybe you're a freelance video editor juggling 4K footage, or a small post-production shop that can't afford a full-blown SAN but still needs a reliable way to move massive media libraries without constantly hitting a bottleneck. The fear of dropping a few grand on a box that sounds impressive on paper but ends up sitting idle in a corner is real. You want something that lives up to its headline, that feels solid in your workflow, and that actually saves you money in the long run. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's talk about the SanDisk Professional 52TB GRAID Project 2. At first glance the numbers are jaw-dropping. 7,200 revolutions per minute Ultrastar enterprise drives packed into a single chassis, wired together in RAID 0 for a combined capacity that tops 52 terabytes. That alone puts it in a different league from the typical 4 terabytes external drives you see on a coffee table. But the real question is, does that raw capacity translate into a tool you'll actually use, or does it become an expensive paperweight? Who should consider buying this? If you spend most of your week moving, editing, or backing up multi-hour timelines of 4K, 6K, or even 8K raw footage, the bandwidth you need is huge. The GRAID Project 2 promises up to 520 megabytes per second read and 510 megabytes per second write when you connect it via Thunderbolt 3. In practice, that means you can copy an entire 200 gigabyte project in under 7 minutes, and you won't see the dreaded stutter when scrubbing through a timeline in Premiere Pro or DaVinci Resolve. The RAID 0 striping also spreads the data across both drives, so each drive only handles half the workload at any moment, which can keep the spindle temperature a bit lower than a single drive pushing the same data rate. Another practical strength is the ProBlade SSD slot on the front. It's a magnetic slot that lets you snap in a 2.5-inch SSD without opening the case. If you have a handful of 1 terabyte or 2 terabytes SSDs you already own for caching, you can slot one in, and the unit will treat it as a separate volume. In a real-world edit, you could keep your current project files on the SSD for the fastest random access, while the massive RAID volume holds the source footage and final renders. That hybrid setup is something you usually need a separate NAS or a custom build to achieve. The color-coded cable indicators are a small but thoughtful detail. Thunderbolt 3, USB-C 10 gigabits per second, and the power cable all have different colored ends, so you can plug everything in without a guessing game. The first time I set it up, I was able to hook the power brick, the Thunderbolt cable, and the optional USB-C backup line in under 2 minutes, and the drive lit up green to confirm it recognized the correct connections. Now, let's get into the hidden trade-offs. First, RAID 0 is all about speed, not redundancy. If one of the two 7,200 revolutions per minute drives fails, the entire 52 terabytes array is lost. That's a gamble you have to accept if you need the raw throughput. The safe play is to keep a secondary backup strategy, an external SSD, a cloud bucket, or a separate RAID 1 NAS for critical assets. The drive itself doesn't do any automatic mirroring, so you'll have to schedule backups yourself. Second, because these are traditional hard disk platters, random access performance isn't as snappy as an all-SSD solution. If you're doing heavy color grading that constantly jumps between frames, you may notice a slight lag compared with a pure SSD array, even though the sequential speeds are impressive. In most editing suites, that lag is tolerable, but if your workflow revolves around tight, frame-by-frame work, you might still want an SSD cache, which, conveniently, the ProBlade slot already supports. Third, the unit isn't exactly portable. It's a 3.5-inch chassis, weighs close to 20 pounds, and needs a dedicated power brick. You won't be slipping it into a backpack for on-the-road shoots. If you're a solo creator who needs something you can pack in a bag and take to client locations, this isn't the right fit. It shines when it stays in a studio or a dedicated editing suite where it can be powered continuously and accessed via a fixed Thunderbolt dock. Cost is another practical consideration. The price tag for a 52 terabytes RAID system like this is steep, but when you break it down per terabyte it's still cheaper than buying an equivalent amount of SSD storage. For teams that need huge media libraries without blowing their hardware budget, the GRAID Project 2 offers a sweet spot, massive capacity, decent speed, and the ability to upgrade with SSDs when needed. If you're a hobbyist who only occasionally edits 4K video, you'll likely pay for capacity you'll never use, and a smaller 8TB Thunderbolt drive would be a more sensible purchase. So, who should skip it? Anyone looking for a simple plug-and-play backup drive for documents, photos, or occasional video work will find this overkill.